So basically, like I'm currently at ICER Bhopal, and my lab is called as Moon Lab here at ICER, wherein we mainly work on unmanned vehicles, underwater, aerial, and ground vehicles, and multi-robot systems, wherein we want to develop path planning, task allocation, collision avoidance kind of an algorithms for futuristic missions. And apart from that, when we increase the number of robots to a larger numbers, so it becomes pretty difficult in terms of communication overloads and other things for controlling them. So a natural way is to extend the multi-robot systems with human control, wherein deal with what kind of interfaces that we can give to the system so that it is much easier to control for the human operator in terms of larger systems. So that's my overall research landscape. So here, so although I don't work much with future factories, but there is some work which we are currently doing on large scale multi-robot planning, but that part I'm not going to talk here because it's still under development. But what I'll give is a very generic overview of how the multi-agent or multi-robot path planning or path finding problems are being very largely used. Okay. So the outline is some examples of mobile robots in future factories and what are the current technologies used in that. And then I'll just give a brief overview of one part is called the path following problem, which is very much part of any kind of a mobile robot systems. And the other is some kind of an overview of how we do a path planning in for multi-agent systems in terms of coupled and decoupled systems. And then a very large introduction to conflict research for multi-agent pathfinding that way I'm going to talk, and then maybe some conclusions around that. Okay. So you might have already known or already seen in a very large way the use of robots. So this is a simple warehouse of Amazon, wherein each stack is basically carried by a robot, right? So you are given a fixed space and then you want to maximize the storage inside that fixed space, right? So the only best way is for you to make sure that the corridors around which you move are going to be quite small so that you can pack your material inside the fixed space to a very large extent. So in the current scenario where Amazon is using very significantly, it's like you have robots that will move from their stack location, whichever row or the column is inside the warehouse, and then it goes to the delivery point and then just goes there, and then the object or the item from that particular point is picked up. Another thing you can see on the floor, you have lots of markers. Okay, so these are like typical April tags or RQ markers, which basically tell like where you are on the space. Okay, so you can easily read that, and then you can use that to navigate between one location to another locations. See, obviously there are one aspects which is going to be to tell, okay, how do the robots find the paths from their current location, wherever they are in the warehouse, to the stock point, right? So wherein they need to deploy or give their the material. The other thing is during its motion, it needs to avoid obstacles both in terms of other robots, okay, in terms of navigating any other obstacles which are prone inside the warehouse. Okay, so this is something that has been done, is currently in work with lots of Amazon warehouses. I think even now, even the Flipkarts have started a similar kind of factory. Rather, it's not a factory, rather it's a more like a warehouses. So other thing is the same kind of a technology is also being used in, let's say, in automotive industry with Amron delivering, wherein a small pieces or including depending on the size of your robot, which is capable of delivering even a big a car. So now you can have car assemblies. Okay, it's no more a stationary point where the entire assembly is done with a static manipulator robots. Now you can actually make the entire car move from one location to another location just by using this kind of big robots that can carry in terms of 1.5 ton or a 2 ton kind of payloads. So now you can think that a simple move from one location to another location with a vertical stack of objects that Amazon uses, to the stack can be anything, right? It can be even a simple assembly of a car which can go from one location to another location around the factory and just gets fitted with different parts, right? So but each of these different applications will have a certain constraints associated with this. For instance, in case of your Amazon robotics, so since you have a vertical stack, so the robot size and the vertical stack size, the vertical you can be higher, but the stack size around the robot is same as the robot. However, in case of this kind of a car, then you have objects, or it can take the payloads that are of different sizes. So when you make the planning for the vehicle, you also need to consider these aspects. So other thing is a part of factory outlet, or you can think it's a kind of going and coming, is your airports. Let's say the big airport, let's consider like any of the metropolitan or any of the international hubs like the Frankfurt or anything like that, wherein you need to tow your aircraft from the gate to the what is that called as taxiway. Okay, until that point you basically need your vehicle to be towed. So from the taxiway point, the towing vehicle, which is basically like given here, let's see if I can. So this is the towing vehicle. Okay, so the towing vehicle, nowadays it's more manual, but you want it to be operated in terms of an autonomous way, so that you can do a large scale deployment, because the manual labor is pretty expensive in other countries, right? So now we can remove that, and then we can put an automated vehicle. So now these towing vehicles, if you look at any one point of time, you'll have a few tens of aircrafts inside the airport, right? So now these towing vehicles need to go grab the aircraft once it lands and then bring it back to the taxiway. So in this way, there are two things. One is, how do you ensure that the plans given by your planner, okay, the centralized planner for this taxi towing vehicles are going to be conflict free, right? So now you have moved from a robot sized payload in the Amazon robotics example to a car in case of an automotive industry, and then now to an aircraft, right? So now your constrained space on which you can move just has blown up to a very significant extent. So you need to take these huge aspects into account while planning. Okay, so we'll look at some of these conflicts in the forthcoming slides. So another thing is, why do we really need an automated ways to do for an aircraft is once you land, right? So by the time you get a gate allocated to you, you need to keep running your engines. So that basically increases the CO2 emissions, and there is a mandate to reduce the CO2 emissions inside the airport space. So that for that purpose, now you have electric towing machines that can just go and grab the steering wheel of the aircraft once it lands. Then after that, the aircraft can switch off its engines, thereby reducing the CO2 emissions inside the airports. Because that is a broader objective around that electric towing. So one part was, okay, may not be that much relevant for the future factories, but we worked on an electric vehicle for autonomous GPS-based navigation, which can in turn be used while developing planning and control algorithms for the vehicles. So here we have a So here is the basically a control panel, manual panel, that from which you can control the vehicle whether to be in manual or in autonomous mode. So you have a LiDAR, which is basically like throwing you the LiDAR points from which you create a 2D map, which is a binary map. So wherein you have this dark color obstacles and the white space is the free space. And and this is the heading direction of the vehicle, and this is the current location of the vehicle. Okay. So whenever you are, you basically at the end point, you just give one goal point. So depending on the map, right, you will get different paths, and the paths are in terms of these dots that you're getting. Okay. So what you do is you just give the the first point or the second point as the next goal point, and depending on the steering angle difference between the current steering angle and the required steering angle, you give that as an input to here. So this is how the entire system works in terms of a GPS-based navigation. So yeah, in turn, for the GPS one is it is using the current GPS, and it also has a map wherein a pre-recorded set of GPS waypoints are already given to the map. Okay, so from one waypoint to another waypoint, it keeps moving, and then it knows that which is the next waypoint that it needs to move, and it uses the LiDAR only for navigation in terms of whether you want to collide or don't want to collide. Right? If there is no LiDAR, then it just basically uses the GPS waypoints to move from one point to another point. So how do you do that, right? So if I take a simple a path following so-called idea, right? So I'm giving one waypoint, which is going to be here, and this is the other waypoint, waypoint 2, 0 and 1. And my current location is here, V. Right? So which means that I am off the track. Right? So then I can tell that you give a cross-track error, some kind of a D. Okay, and then let's say that my heading angle of the vehicle is here, and then I want to pull from here to here. Right? So, so this is the basic idea of path following, wherein you want to follow a path. Okay, so a path following is a bit different from the trajectory following, in the sense that in trajectory you have a time t that tells you that you need to be at a particular location at a particular time. However, in the path following, the time aspect is not parameterized. Okay. So that gives you the flexibility that even at time t tends to infinity, you can reach to the point. Okay, you can reach the path. Okay. So the very simple idea like this can help you in achieving or ability to move from your current location onto the path so that you can follow the path given by your waypoints. This could be at the Amazon robots, or this could be at the ground level wherein you have a kinematic constraints on the vehicle. Okay, so to do this, so there are several kinds of algorithms that one can implement. One is, let's say, a control-based algorithms. Like the most simplest would be like, can I use a PID? You can use a PID, but it is not that much efficient in terms of disturbances, right? Because it's like an static tuned controller for a given particular setting that you use it, and then you allow the vehicle to do it. However, in the reality, there are a lot of disturbances that occur. For aircraft, it is going to be wind. For ground, it is going to be most likely the slip conditions or the road conditions and things like that. It's not only just a simple PID. There are several nonlinear controllers, very advanced ones like sliding mode or backstepping, things like that, or Lyapunov based. So that's one set of literature working on path following. The other is guidance-based algorithms, wherein you just only give the high-level desired heading angle command and nothing more else. Okay, so these typically guidance-based commands are derived from, let's say, the missile guidance literature, wherein there are different types of guidance algorithms in the missile guidance literature, which can be easily modified to accommodate these kinds of problems. The other set could be a simplest one is the carrot chasing algorithm. Let's say in the carrot chasing, you basically, like, let's say you have what's called a rabbit, right? So you have a rabbit and then you have a carrot. So if you put the carrot in front of the rabbit and rabbit tries to move towards the carrot. So what you do is you change the location of this rabbit to the next location at time t plus delta t, right? So then the rabbit will move from here to here. Okay. So similarly, what you can do is you can say that I can start my carrot to be here, then the rabbit will move towards here. Then you change your carrot by small distance, then this guy will come here. You can change like this. So in other terms, this is more like in the guidance terminology, it's called like a pure pursuit kind of a guidance. But in the normal robotics terms where people have used in 80s and early 90s, it's called as carrot chasing algorithm. Okay, so both are almost similar. It's just the kind of constants that they use in determining the lateral acceleration is what is different. Okay, so this forms one, like you need to move from one location to another. So what is the way in which you can move inside your factory location? So we'll come to now to the actual problem, like in your warehouse. So you have warehouse, or even it can be a automotive factory, futuristic automotive factory, wherein you don't have a single space where you can do. Rather, as the objects move around, they're being joined together to form a new elements into the system, so that at the end of all the joints, you have a product that is ready. Okay, so let's look at this particular problem of multi-agent pathfinding. Okay, so wherein you are given a goal to each of the agents, and they are currently located at one place. So let's say that I have two agents. This is agent 1 and this is agent 2. Okay, so and this is the current boundary of that agent. So what you want is that you want agent 1 to come to here. Okay, and then you want agent 2 come here. Okay, so so these two cannot directly go here, because if it goes, then you have agent 2 here and agent 1 here. So what is the best way is that you want your agent 2 to come here. So then agent 1 can go here, right? So then the agent 2 can come back. So this is the plan, right? So you need to plan for agent 2 what should be its a set of motions, and you need to plan for agent 1 what should be its set of plans, right? So a sequence of locations that these agents should move as time t is discretized over time, right? At every point in time. Okay. So how can you do a plan for this? Right. So there are two ways that we can think of. One is called the coupled planning, and the other is basically a decoupled planning. So in the coupled, wherein we want to solve the problem for both the agents at the same time. Okay. So this becomes more complicated. As for two agents it could be easy, but as you increase the number of agents, then the total spanning space and the constraint space, they will have a lot of coupling with each other, and it becomes a huge total mess to decouple, total mess to find paths from. However, once you find, let's say, assume by some magic you find the paths, then those paths are supposed to be very optimal, because you are considering all the constraints of different vehicles at one shot, okay, and you are trying to solve the problem. So it's good, the solutions are going to be close to optimal, but at the same time you have computational difficulties. The other one is a decoupled way, which is pretty good in the sense that each agent just makes a plan for itself, okay, and whenever there is a conflict, they try to do some kind of a deadlock resolution to deconflict it. So decoupled is good, but because of being a heuristic nature, your paths could be quite really bad. At times, it could be quite long than what you would expect it to go. So if you look at the efficiency between decoupled and the coupled, there could be a pretty big difference. Okay, so what ideally you would like to have is, I would like to have some features of coupled, but at the same time I want them to be much more lower computational complexity, so that this can be used in real-time systems, right? Or I can plan in close to real time, may not be exactly at the real time, right? Or at least, like, say, a few minutes before the plan is given out to the robots to do some job, right? So this is how the entire objective or the entire idea of so-called conflict-based research has come. Okay, conflict-based research. So from two robots, right? So from two robots, let's say I move to hundreds of robots. Okay. So then my complexity has just blown from solving a simple robot on two locations to hundreds of locations. Okay, and because of presence of hundreds of robots itself will become hindrance, because they themselves will become obstacles apart from the stationary obstacles that you have in the space. So the solution space on which you move shrinks, so it becomes difficult because there will be a lot of other agents also trying to move. Okay, so let's still be around the Amazon robotics warehouse problem, because that's still an interesting one with different implications as well as practical application involved. Okay, so these are my racks. Okay, and between these two racks is where where the robots can move. Okay, so here unlike okay, so and then you have the pickup points here, because these are the manual pickup points wherein the robots come here, a person will pick it up, and then the robot goes back. Okay, so each robot has a fixed destination where it should go, and then put the item. Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir, please.
Yeah. Okay. So where the item needs to be picked from the rack. Okay, so the constraints are basically like, because this is so narrow that it is almost fitting the entire entire robot, you cannot have two robots, one is moving in this direction and the other one is moving in the opposite direction. Okay, so it's not possible for you to do that, right? So here you have at the intersections, robots can collide, so you need to make sure that they're not colliding. Okay, so this, when you have like this, then basically like they have to stop. So if they stop, then the time is basically ticked. Then your plan should take care of the time, the place, the location, and things like that. So planning for hundreds of robots becomes a very difficult problem as such. So what the idea of the conflict-based search is to try to find plans so that it can generate for tens to hundreds of robots at any point of time. Okay. So what is a conflict-based search? For that, we'll take some, before entering, some simple assumptions. So if you are seen in the robot, in the Amazon video, you have seen these kind of a small dots, right? So these are localization. These are localization points. It could be QR codes, right? So what the robot does, it moves from along these. Okay. So underneath this robot, you have a small vision camera that basically looks for these dots. Okay. So it goes and stays there. And then depending on its location, that where it needs to go, either in this direction or this direction or this direction or this direction, it will make the motion. Okay. So for simplicity, we will assume the robots to be a point mass, simply because these will occupy, each square will is occupied by only one robot. So it's pretty easy or straightforward to this assumption. Okay. So there are no kinematic constraints because these are like, the cleaning robots or holonomic robots that can move in any direction. Okay. And the environment is discretized because you have seen that these localization marks along the floor are kept in grids. So a discretized environment makes it a very nice, easy way to deal with this. Okay. Of course, you can extend later on. I'll just show through other works that other people have done, wherein they have extended the grid world to a continuous world where the robots are having kinematic constraints. Okay. So each agent moves north, east, south, or west into an adjacent unblocked cell. You are not allowed with a vertex collision, wherein agent 1 moves from X to Y, and then agent 2 moves from Z to Y. You are not allowed in the edge collision, which basically means that agent 1 moves from X to Y and agent 2 moves from Y to X. It's basically like swapping kind of a thing. So later on, I'll just show other kinds of collisions that can occur and then how we need to take that into account. So the collision conflict-based search is basically like proposed in 2012 to 2015 times, wherein you want to find paths for large scale number of agents. Okay, so here you consider a simple example. Okay, you have 2 agents. Okay, the blue agent and the red agent. Fine. So this is the start location for the blue. This is the start location for the red. So I'll show you another example, which is much more in detail. But here, just let's consider. So, and then red one will go here, and the blue one will go here. So here you can see that after 2 steps, basically like you have a conflict that both of them are going to come into this cell. Okay, at the same time, right? So which is, you don't want that to happen. So this blue path, okay, and the red path, that for now assume that they used in A-star algorithm, okay, because in a discretized world, A-star will give you the optimal algorithm from a source location to a destination location, taking all the constraints into account, especially on the obstacle sides, right? So this is like single path, okay? It is not, the A-star is not taking care of other agents present in the world. So it is just thinking about himself and then moving from one location to another location. Okay. So now that 2 agents are found that, oh, there is a conflict at some cell. Okay. So what CBS, so-called the short form for conflict-based search, does is, okay. So at this search point, so you have agent 1 and the agent 2. So for the red cell, red agent, okay, the red agent will constrain the red agent is not allowed to be at the cell 2 at time 2. Okay. If it's not there, then what is the next best path that it can have? Then basically like this is the new path. If it does the new path, then what is the total cost of the agents? Is blue is 1, 2, 3, 4, red is 1, 2, 3, 4. So which basically means that without having, with the new path, the total cost is 8. Okay. Similarly, I will do the same thing for blue agent. Okay, I'll remove that blue is not allowed to be there. Okay. So then what is the path cost? So in that case, you basically like I have another is 8. However, here we can see that by doing this, the conflict has moved to this guy. Okay. In the 1, 2, 3 in 3, 3 area, and then the conflict here is moved to 1, 1 area, right? So what you do is that again for this you basically make another changes, okay, so that you have a deconfliction that is happening. So in this way you basically like keep on doing it until you find paths for both the agents that are deconflicting in nature. Okay. And then you find that what is the total cost associated with both the paths. Then based on that you basically pick the one that is going to be the least, because that particular least cost path is going to give you paths for both the vehicles where in time and in space. So a much more simple example is, let's consider a two-stage algorithm. So the conflict-based search is basically, okay, I think there is some, is it's a two-stage algorithm, wherein in the first stage you find the paths, which is optimal paths using your A star. If not A star, if you like some other algorithm, then you can still use that, because you just need only a reference path from point A to point B. In the second stage, what you do is basically do the conflict resolution. Okay? So a nicer example is this. Let's say you have two mouse 1 and mouse 2. They want to take their cheese, which is being given. For mouse 1, it needs to come to cell A3, and then mouse 2 needs to go from cell C2 to B4. Okay. So what is the best possible way? So if I do an only optimal way, so then what I can do is that, because this is a very, very small grid, I can enumerate all the possible ways in which the agent A1, so the mouse 1 and then mouse 2 can move, so that mouse 1 will go to its goal location, which is cheese 1, mouse 2 will go to its goal location, which is cheese 2. So this is the enumeration that I will do. Okay, so which is so here I have all the enumerations. Like I'll start from D2, it goes to D3, C3, B3, A3, D2, C2. Okay, so all different possible combinations for A1, and then all different possible combinations for point 2. And then from this I'll take the best ones so that the total solution is less. Okay, so in this case, so we have a D2, D3, C3, B3, A3. This is for the agent 1, and then C1, B1, B2, B3, B4 for agent 2, sorry, mouse 2. Okay, so mouse 2 will come, okay, maybe I think, let me write it up and let's see. So mouse 2 will come D2, D3, C3, P3, A3, and then this guy will come from C1, B1, B2, B3, B4, right? So you have a conflict here, because at this point, mouse 1 is coming 1, 2, 3 steps, mouse 2 is also coming 1, 2, 3 steps, although the cost is very less, which is 8. Okay. So what I do? So I have to split it up, because there is a conflict at this location, right? So I'll split up, and then I'll say that, okay, I will not make mouse 2 to go to this location. Okay, so then I'll change it and then say that, okay, C1, B1, B2, B. Okay, no. So this is for solution 1, which is D2, C2, B2, A2, T2. So this is B2, go to C2, it will go to B2, it will go to A2, and then A4, sorry, A3, right? And then you have for C1, B1, B2, B3, B4. Okay, so if I do this, then the total cost is 8. Okay, so but I have tried to say that you will not go here this location. Okay, so for other case, we basically like I have D2, C2, have what, this guy will come like this. You have C1, C2, C3, C4, and then B4. Okay, this is for the other part. So now what has happened is that we have shifted our conflict from this location, which was earlier, to two other locations, here and here. Okay, with these two bifurcation search. Now we will take either a 2 or a 3. Let's say we'll take 2 and then we'll go around. From 2, we'll see that we are now trying to resolve this conflict, B2B2 conflict. Okay, so if I do a B2B2 conflict, then I'm just doing an D2, C2, C2, which is C. Here we are telling that you just saying C2 for another time step. Okay, and then you take B2, A2, and then A3. Similarly, so then the agent, the mouse 2 will have the same, right? And here, the other one is this guy will be changing its path, which is C1, C2, C3, C4, and B4, while you have D2, C2, B2, A2, okay? So in this way, you basically like change, and then now you have this cost is 8, this cost is 9, this cost is 8. Okay, so because it's still 8, so now we need to resolve for B3, right? So for B3, we will try to resolve, and then we find that again with cost of, here it is C3 that we are trying to resolve, because B3 is what we were trying to resolve with 2 and 3 node. So with here we have C3. For C3 resolution, we end up having with another cost 8 and another one with cost 9. Okay, so but what has happened during the process is, so now you have this part has been resolved without any conflict, but this part still has having, like, you're moving to the C2 cell at the same time, right? So here also you have C2 cell at the same time. Here is good, so here is fine, you don't have to resolve it. So then you again go back and then change for your C2, so that you further bifurcate to get the new paths. Okay, so now the C2 resolution has been done by first you change for D1, so mouse 1, and then you change for mouse 2. So now you have D2, D2, C2, B2, A2, A3, and then C1, C2, C3, C4. Okay, so C1, C2, C3, C4 is one, and then the other is D2, D2, you just stay here for one more turn, and then you go to C2, you go to B2, you go to A2, and then A3. Okay. So by adding one step wherein you just stay there for one time unit, you are able to get a better cost. Okay. But it is not as good as the optimal cost for certainly, right? So then you basically like use it for here. Here also there is still C2 is there. So you next is you do another further bifurcation, and then now you have a paths that are deconflicting in nature. Okay, so now the costs associated with all the deconflicting nature, which are all the leaf nodes of this graph, represent you the costs. So you have 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. So which means that all of them are the same cost of 9. So you can pick any one path from here, and then that will be your optimal path associated with this. So here you have seen that by using a search tree, you're deconflicting the cell where the conflict is occurring, either in space or in time. Okay, so in this way, now you can do it for a much bigger set of agents and different kinds of environments. So for example, there were 3 specific environments that the authors have looked at. Okay, and then they compared that with CTS, ICTS plus C3 and A star plus OD. Okay, so here you have one crazy environment, okay, with large scale numbers, and then this is as with you increase the number of agents. So you can see that for this particular environment, okay, so for this particular environment, the CBS is doing very good, right? It's giving you least cost pass in terms of the conflicts or in terms of total cost. However, if you look at this particular environment, which is quite very crazy, CBS is doing the worst, because you have roads which are like straight line paths, and then you cannot allow the vehicles to cross across each other, so you end up spending more time to wait. Okay, so that is resulting in having a much more worse performance in case of in this environment. Similarly, in case of this environment, which is it's between these two, we can see the CBS is doing a middle ground between A star and ICTS. Okay. So if I use just a simple conflict-based search, it is not essential that for all sorts of environments it is going to do the best. So it depends on the environment very much, the conflict-based search. So it's a good strategy. It gives you so-called optimal paths in terms of search, but at the same time, it is not that it can be used in all sorts of environments. You may want to tweak or find different algorithms that are useful for different environments. So this is another example, which is basically like, okay, so this is okay, I forgot the title. I'll send later, with kinematic constraints, wherein so you want to use a car-like robot. So until previously you saw that we assumed that the robot is a point mass. Okay, so now you don't want to be a point mass, rather you want it to be an let's say that you are having the ground rover, okay, to be carrying a car which is having a big physical shape, right? So you want to ensure that the kind of trajectories that it is taking, it is no more a holonomic, but it is a non-holonomic vehicle. So for that purpose, so what we do, what this paper does is, it basically uses a heuristic A star, okay, so that it can replan for each of the agents wherever the conflict is. Okay, so here you have the input problem, wherein each of these robots, okay, they need to move from this location to, most likely, let's say this guy will go to here, this guy will come here, and then this guy will go here. Okay, so these are their goal locations, and the goal locations are also position oriented, in the sense that they need to be in a particular direction only, not any direction that they are. Okay, so when they try to solve it, so you'll end up having body conflicts as shown here. So for this purpose, you use a heuristic A star. Okay, so that basically like finds paths in time such that these collisions are avoided by allowing the agents to be as if a temporary temporary collisions, okay, temporary objects by which you avoid it, and then you use the revised plans, which is going to be the avoided plans for these agents. So this video will basically like give you much more nicer plan for this. Okay, just you can see it's just a 2-minute. So this is the body conflict at which it is occurring, and then you're going to add new constraints to the conflict by its spatiotemporal constraint, and then you solve the problem. You get the path for each, and then similarly for each other agents, you try to do the same thing. Okay, so in a sequentially, if you plan, then you will do like this. So here you can see that the time taken in the presence of the obstacles for the same 20 number of 50 cross 50 20 agents is that it's going to be much difficult. Okay, So this, they increased it to large number of agents. Agents under different sizes. Also, it really works pretty well, the conflict based search, because it is not only just using the A star to find the paths whenever there is a conflict, since it is using multiple other stars, right? So it basically makes things much easier. So you tend to use these kinds of systems or these kinds of planners even for a larger factory size systems wherein you want to just automatically work it on. So what is the objectives that a typical multi-agent pathfinding problem have? There are two problems we can use. The two objectives that you can think of. One is called the make span, which is basically the number of timestamps required for all the agents to reach their targets. Okay. The other is basically the sum of costs, which is basically nothing but the number of timestamps required for each agent to reach its target. So you can use either any of these two to do it. So types of conflicts, we saw two types, which is basically like vertex conflict and edge conflict earlier. Okay. So vertex conflict is the agents are planned to occupy the same vertex at the same time step. Okay. So let's say take that these two are agents, right? So they're going to occupy the same thing at the same time, which is B. Edge conflict, the agents are planned to traverse the same edge at the same time in the same direction. So in this like this. So the following conflict is one agent is planned to occupy a vertex that was occupied by another agent in the previous time step. So if you take A and B were like this, so B will move from B to C and then A is taking from A to B. So that's like following conflict. You want to have at least some space with each other. Cycle conflict is the same time step. Okay. Every agent moves in a vertex that was previously occupied by another agent, forming a rotating cycle. Like this. If A, B, C, D are there, then A is moving from A to B, B is moving from B to C, and then C is moving from C to D, and then D is moving from D to A. So you have some kind of a cyclic pattern, which is again a conflict. So this kind of cycles can create, infinite cycles. It can end up into like that, which basically means that the no agent will have any plan to move from one location to their goal locations. So you should not have such kind of a plans. The other is swapping conflict, which is A is moving from B and B is moving from A. That is not possible because typically these areas of these agents, okay, places have the cells are very small enough that you can't just go over one another. Okay. So what will happen at the end of once they reach the target, right? So once the agent can reach the target, you can think of two ways. One, you can assume that the agent is still there, okay, which is stay at the target. In that sense, what will happen is that these agents can become obstacles for the other agents, so which could create a bit more longer paths for the agents to find. Okay. The other is it can disappear at the target. So under this assumption, when the agent reaches its target, it immediately disappears, which basically means that it allows the planners to find much easier paths because the number of conflicts that they will have will be a far less now. So there are feasibility rules, which basically tells you like there are robustness rules, which tells that these rules are basically designed to ensure that a MAPF solution that has been determined, okay, it considers inverted delays in execution. In the sense that if there is some delay in motion moving from one point to another point because of some particular issues, or maybe the information was not relayed properly or whatever it is. Right? So it should be robust to certain levels. Let's say some for the next 4 or 5 steps or something like that, it should be robust to such levels. Okay. Other is formation rules, like these are restrictions over the allowed move actions of an agent that depend on the location of the other agents, but are not related to collision, which tells that let's say that you may want a set of agents to move as a formation to meet some kind of a communication requirements or something like that. Then the formation rules ensures that you are moving only in that formation. If you move away from the formation, that is infeasible move. So these are additional rules that can govern the kind of systems that is being used. We're almost close here. And then the last is a task and the agents, wherein the kind of multi-agent pathfinding problem that you can do is a variant. Okay, so the objective is to move the set of agents to a set of targets, target vertices, right? But it does not matter which agent moves in which target. Okay, it's like saying I have a 10 agents, okay, and I have 10 targets. The objective is that these agents should go and bring all the 10 targets to the pickup place. So it doesn't matter which agent is doing which job. Okay, all it does is you need to finish up the job as soon as possible. So that's what is called the anonymous MAPF. You have a different variant of that, which is called the color MAPF. So this MAPF variant is a generalization of anonymous, in which agents are grouped into teams. Okay, and every team has a set of targets. The objective is to move the agents in each team to their targets. Okay, so the team could have targets that are crossing each other. It may not be the partition space wherein, let's say, you have red team and the blue team. Red will be only with the red targets and blue will be only with the blue targets. Blue and red targets could be mixed. Okay, so you need to ensure that even under such conditions, you are still able to find paths to meet your colored locations. The other one is basically like you have something called the online MAPF, wherein you continuously keep solving the problem on the same graph. Okay, so for instance, you have a robot that has picked up from its stack and then went and delivered to the point. So now again an MAPF is solved so that it can pick up the next target in a different location. Okay, so this is called an MAPF, or it is something called as lifelong MAPF, because in a warehouse robot, right? So the robots keep on doing the work. So once they deliver at the collective, like the collection kiosk, it goes back, it picks up some other thing and then brings it back. So unlike the humans wherein you need a break, so these robots do not need any break, and hence the efficiency of delivery just increases. So, but at the same time, your pathfinding algorithm needs to continuously plan paths for all the robots. Okay, so that's where you call as a lifelong MAPF. So there is a good website which is called mapf.info, where you can get a lot of information about the multi-agent pathfinding. Okay, so multi-agent pathfinding is the kind of problem that you want to solve in general for these large-scale warehouses, factory settings that takes kinematic constraints into account. You have different variations within this problem space of MAPF that one can use. Okay, so yeah, so that's it. I don't have anything else. Thank you very much. So if you have any questions, you can shoot.
Hello,
Dear
sir.
participants, you can unmute yourself and ask your queries.
Yeah. Sir, good afternoon. This is Pancharan Jha. I have a question.
Yeah.
Hello. Sir, actually in this MAPF,
Yeah.
what type of microcontrollers or some processing units we have used in real time?
Okay, so MFPF is typically an offline planner. Okay, so you basically, like, let's say you use it on your desktop. Okay, you design the plan and
Yeah.
you give the plan to the agents.
Okay, fine. So through
Otherwise, if you
through-
want to do the online MFPF, which is doing continuously, right? So you can use a simple Raspberry Pi to do the job.
yes. Raspberry Pi is sufficient.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Other participants can ask queries.
Sir, hello.
Yes, please.
I put it in the chat box, sir. That's my question.
So is it the 3D machine vision?
Yeah. You are able
What
to
is
see, sir?
3D? Hello?
Sorry, sir. Excuse me. The mission vision was given in the second session. Maybe you can. This question we can post to the respective speaker. Any questions from other participants?
Okay, so here there is, if in GPS based autonomous driving, all of a sudden any obstacle
Hello?
arrives. Yeah.
Hello. Sir, how these industrial robots are controlled, sir? Hello.
Oh, these are autonomously controlled. So you
Are
have
they controlled by?
they are automatically controlled. There no one, there is no human in the control.
No human control.
No human control. What you do is that you give a path, right? You want to go from source location to a destination location, right? And the entire world is a grid world, right? So your planner will tell you what is the cells that you need to visit in a sequence. Let's say cell 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You need to visit this way. So each cell has a small QR mark or a QR code. Okay. So once the robot moves to that particular cell, it reads that QR code and it knows that it is in cell 7. So then it knows that where the cell 8 is. Okay, which is going to be just in front, which is going to be a straight way. Okay, or you have a map that is available to you, right? So from that map, you know which cell is in which direction.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so there is one on if in GPS based navigation, autonomous driving, all of a sudden any obstacle arrives, then what will happen in microseconds for optimal path finding
Sir,
routes?
one more question. Any sensors have been used there for the?
They use radar kind of sensors for collision avoidance, and they use a camera for detecting the QR codes.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so CPS is not used to solve for the GPS based autonomous driving. So if something comes sudden, so you have two types of typically sensors that are there. One is based on your radar, which is going to be for short range, or you can use an lidars, which is that short range lidars. And then one is the long range lidars, typically the Velodyne. So Velodyne, the lidars, they have a 1.5 meters to 3 meters blind zone around the car because of the tilt angle, right? So it cannot see in the close range. So it is used only in the long range. So in the short range, you may have to use either the lidars or ultrasounds or the radars for detecting. And then based on that, typically if there is somebody who's coming early within a short distance, close to the vehicle, then basically like the emergency brake will take over it, and then it'll just stop the vehicle until the object is gone. Unless and until the object is a bit further away and the collision vector motion between the vehicle and the object is not intersecting within the deviation time enough, it'll just wait. It'll just stop. So in this case, MFPF is not the right, because you need a continuous motion. So basically, like, you'll end up using any of the sampling based planners, or even a simple spline based planners for this.
Hello, sir. Am I audible? Yeah. How can this MAPF help in case of collaborative robots, like a human being and a robot is working end effector? So in that case, how can it help contribute?
CBS is so far has been used only in 2D space.
Yeah.
So your end effector is in 3D, or it has n degree space, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes very difficult to do the config search in that particular space.
Okay.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, transforming that 3D space in 2D space, some approximate planning can be done probably.
Those things can be done, and the same kind of a solver which has been continuously used, those can be used, right? So because now in the 2D space, it's basically telling which cells the end effector is going to occupy at what time.
Yeah.
Let's say if you have two end effectors that are working with each other in a and then they're supposed to coordinate in doing something, let's say on working on a car or something like that, right? So then it makes sense, because now you'll have cubes that you can put, right? It's a 3D cube, and then wherever there is a conflict, then they will resolve the conflict.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.